Hey, this is Paul Roberson from Flo Technology, and this is Pursue Vegas.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Pursue Vegas podcast. I'm your host, Dave Berlin.
And I'm your co-host, Tony Wynn.
And I know I always say that we're excited for today's guest, but this one is something super special. Today's guest is Mr. Paul Roberson. He is more than just Paul, right? He's an incredible human. And I will say that he is a serial entrepreneur, and he has a talent for making disruptive ideas a reality. Right now, he's the founder and CEO of Flo Technology, and their team is launching a groundbreaking 360-degree athletic performance training system, Flo Unleashed, that redefines resistance training. Paul the Man, welcome to the show.
What's up, man? That little 1 minute spiel right there was better than I could say it. So thanks.
It's just
taking it.
A little bit of enthusiasm, 2 parts Red Bull, and some old school ripped fuel with testosterone booster.
Oh yeah, you have no fucks to give.
Or you can just go basic cocaine, you know?
Right? I think it has a shelf life and it's expired. So now here we are. No, I'm just kidding.
And here we go.
No, man, I'm so glad you're here. I know we saw each other a few times before we met, and it's so funny because just yesterday, I'm breaking down the fourth wall because I don't know what order all these episodes are going to come out, but just yesterday, we had a great interview with Josh Molina from Makers and Finders, and that's the first time I feel like we really just sat down and it's like, who are you? Like, who are you? I think I've seen you at WeWork or whatever, and then we sat down and I learned that you pretty much brought Lyft here. And then we just started talking about all kinds of crazy stuff. And then you had remarkable things that were happening at the time with plant-based Sundays. And you've just been able to not only have these crazy ideas, but just activate every single one of them that remotely mattered at all. You're like, let's do it. Let's go. So please tell us who you are, what you're working on, all the things, bro. All you.
I'd like to think that I'm smart, and title myself like, but I also think, 60% is just willing to go into dark places to find the light, whether it be crazy ideas or, things that I think may have a place in the future, right? So, and then correction. So, yes, I was definitely part of an amazing team that brought Lyft to Vegas. I ran the partnerships in Las Vegas, so pretty much the spearhead, the tip of the spear for opening the door, building bridges. And then also, the team, we all shared a passion about our approach, versus Uber, which was our approach was to learn what unique problems the city is experiencing, and then how can we help contribute, solving those problems with our superhero power, which was at the time, peer-to-peer transportation. And so we were able to activate, in a more organic nature, focusing on people versus profits. And it worked out for Lyft. We definitely, I feel like we conquered the market in regards to brand representation. And that wave that we started still continues to this day. Like, even with Resort World, doing a partnership with Lyft. Like, we were behind that, even though none of us were, we all moved on from Lyft. We were definitely, shout out to Cameron, Alexis, Chris and Jacob. But, it was a great time. Gosh, I guess we start from the beginning, huh? How everything got into it. Well, played college football. Came back home to Vegas one summer, right? I think I wanted a summer job, got in nightlife, didn't end up going back to play college football, right? Lack of impulse control and ego, blame it on that. But shortly after that, got into law enforcement, understanding some of the issues within the households. I was very fortunate that I didn't come from a 2-parent household, but I had 2 parents in my life, right? They were separated. And then working, family services, being child protective service investigator, and then moving on from then juvenile justice services working in the same detention center that I had a brief visit with when in my teens. And then from there, I was just really bored about life. And I was like, all right, luckily enough for me, I had a mentor who was also my frat brother at the time. Shout out Ron Ross. At the time, he was the CTO of Humana Healthcare out here in Las Vegas. And so I was always just chopping it up with him, just throwing shit at the wall, like, thoughts about solutions, whatnot. And he was like, yo, you need to go get your MBA. And I was like, what? I graduated high school with like a 2.6 and then went to college and, most of my courses were electives and, stuff that you could coast. So I went back to school and surprisingly enough, graduated with like a 3.6. So that was like, I think perspective is everything to take away from that. It's not that we're poor students or kids that may be poor students. It's probably just the perspective they have on academia as a whole or academics and how it translates to their life. So nobody taught me that shit when I was a teenager, coming to school. So got the MBA, graduated, but let's just be honest, degrees only give you the ticket to go play ball. You still got to get on the field and kind of what you say, become battle tested, for lack of better terms, right? Learn the game, learn the ropes, learn how to move, learn the speed of the game, how to think on your feet, whatnot. And I think that, being an athlete, a college athlete at the time, being an athlete my whole life, I think that mentality translates like so fluidly across into corporate world or entrepreneurship. And it just you have to adopt the right perspective and understand like what moves the needle forward, how to overcome milestones or missions or whatever the case may be. So after getting the MBA, I went over to UNLV. I became the STEM ambassador of a program over there called Gear Up. So essentially focus on getting kids in, high school, middle school excited about, studying science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And it was crazy because at the same time, this was like a refresher course for me into academia. So it was like, oh shit, I get to learn about science all over again. I get to learn about the fundamentals of technology and engineering and like, the different optics that you need to have to understand math, right? And how it applies to everything in life. So that was a blessing in disguise because it got me back into academia, but this time no distractions such as like football and just being an adolescent, on your own for the first time. So it was great. I was able to have personal conversations and dialogue with the chairmen of each college. So whether it be the College of Engineering, right, College of Computer Science, and then that's where I met the student body president at the time, who became my first business partner, Elias Benjamin. Shout out to Elias. And from there, we just focused on the issue that we were both having, which was all the red tape in academia. So red tape being, I was only able to work with Title I schools for these like STEM hands-on learning curriculums. And it's like, well, why can't I work with this school that I know really needs it or this school that can use it? And he was finding the same red tape issues like, oh, Elias, you could do this by president, but you can't do this. So after sharing the frustrations, right, we was like, well, let's just take this program offline or off campus and offer it to single family households. So that was literally the birth of like our first company, which was called Troph, which was the Greek word for nourishment. And that's when, once we started rolling that out, somehow, some way, we got connected with Tony Shea. And then Tony Shea, rest in peace, Tony. Tony Shea, he brought Zappos out here, right? And that's pretty much the gist of all I knew. And so we had sit down with him, Tony, and, went through their little interview process and got selected to move and live in this Airstream-like community. So imagine a big-ass, parking lot, and then you have about 30 tiny homes and, probably 20 Airstreams all in a circle. You have a container section where it's like a shared kitchen, shared pantry. We even had a container pool, I think, that was just crazy. And we had a pet llama named Marley. And so here I am now living in this community. I quit UNLV. I just had another Achilles surgery from an injury when I was doing law enforcement. And I was just sitting in my little brother had just died, right? I had just I got a DUI like probably a month before my brother died, and so this phase in my life, like moving into that community, was such a crazy blessing for me at the time because of the simple fact that I was able to kind of address my trauma indirectly, right? Through learning about not only myself, but new circles, learning about new people from different backgrounds, and there's no way I would have met some of these individuals before. So living there for 12 months, through collision with others came collaboration, right? And that was the beauty of it. That's where I met my partners on Ponix, because we all kind of moved in the community at the same time. And so they were a group of about 5 guys that came down from New York. They basically refabbed an old Bluebird school bus to be like their not only their home with wheels, but it had like a laser cutter on the sushi beds, a sauna in the back. I think it's just crazy, right? And it ran off used vegetable oil. That was the thing.
No way.
Yeah. 150 gallons.
What does that smell like? You smell like French fries?
Oh, you smell like French fries or old chicken tacos, So it was great, right? And those guys were, I lost my brother, but I gained 5 new brothers, and I really didn't understand the journey I was embarking on in regards to just learning about entrepreneurship, but all the shit that comes with entrepreneurship, such as, if you don't have emotional intelligence by the time you say, I want to be an entrepreneur, well, by the time you become successful within whatever you do in entrepreneurship, I guarantee you, you will be, your EQ will be much higher than when you went going into it. Because, there's no really other way to describe it, but entrepreneurship is, let's say, it's just like blue balls, like it's a lot of blue balls, right? Like a lot of great conversations, people getting you excited about something, and you're like, oh, this momentum is going great, this shit's rolling, and then next thing you know, people either ghost you, or they say no and don't tell you why, or they tell you why and it's a bullshit ass reason, and so you have to almost become an actor, right? Because you can't wear your emotions on your face. You can't wear your emotions, period. So now you got to, put the smile on when you don't want to smile, or, put the smile on when you're sad as shit. Put the smile on when you're mad as fuck. Whatever the case you may be doing, that because your personal life and entrepreneurship, they kind of overlap. As you get deeper into entrepreneurship, that shit becomes a brand, no pun intended. So with that being the case, it was the greatest turning point in my life. Like not only moving in with Tony, and living in that community, but also, collaborating and deciding to go live on a bus with these 5 other guys to take this company, this idea, which was Ponix Farms, and the philosophy around Ponix Farms, it was a container farming company. That was the idea. Put farms in containers because the philosophy was don't move the food, move the farm. And so we can ship farms versus shipping food. Because the reason why, I don't know the number, but let's just say a shit ton for lack of better words. A shit ton of people in the world, many reasons why they don't eat is because there's no supply chain infrastructure in place. Or you could, airdrop food, but they don't have no way they live in a region where you can't really grow food, right? And this is where I think NGOs and that world becomes very powerful, and nonprofits. You'll hear about, I'm not going to name drop, but you'll hear about people just taking their money to some parts or regions in Africa, drilling wells, right? So they can have well water in that village. I was like, all right, this is great. They got water, then we could drop a container, connect, a pump to that container to where now they got water and food. And so, that was the glue. That was the passion that brought us all together. That was the focus. And I was like, all right, I threw all my shit in storage. I didn't have no real reason to kind of stay in Vegas. You know, my girl had left me at the time too. Because obviously I wasn't very like, I wasn't communicating with nobody. I was a shit communicator. I didn't want to talk to nobody. I was just like, look, I just got done reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So I was telling myself, man, I got to get focused on me. I got to say no to a lot of shit that my intuitive compass, I guess, doesn't align with. And so just kind of having that philosophy on life, I said, yeah, like I said, threw all my shit in storage, lived on a bus with 5 other guys. Baby, we moved after a year in Tony, and we all, you know, entered this marriage, so to speak. Our first investor was out in Salt Lake City. So we drove the bus at Salt Lake City, parked the bus in his warehouse, and literally built out a new container by part. Angle iron, welding at, 3 a.m, staying up all night, sleeping on the bus. Showers were like baby wipes, and we'd take a shower at the gym that was like 5 miles away, like probably once or twice a week. It was a really awkward time, and it was right. And I was 32 at the time, 31, and these guys were, the youngest was I think 22, and the oldest I think was 26, 27. So here I am, trying to like deal with my own humility, I guess you could say, from being almost a quote unquote grown ass man on a bus, basically a homeless person right now. But that was like literally the start of the rocket, right? And how everything got in the air, and then everything just kind of snowballed from there. Got into crypto, invested in Ethereum at 66 cents, and then bought my first Bitcoin at $366, and that was all through Kraken platform. And like, gosh, we snowballed that money to where, collectively, I think we all had almost close to $500,000 maybe in crypto. And, I don't advise giving kids that been broke their whole lives money, that type of money. I don't advise that at all. But yeah, we moved out to Marina Del Rey. Then we bought the number 7 Tesla ever made from a salvage yard using crypto.
What?
Yeah, it was wild. Like I'm
Trying to
telling
wrap
you,
my head around that sentence.
these stories are wild. Like shoot, all right, this was the I think the starting phase of like influencers, because we lived next door to some girl that was like a makeup influencer, and we was like, all right, and then we looked her up and she had like 7 million followers. We're like, what the fuck is this? Like, it was just really wild, that whole experience in LA. And it was just it's just really immersive, the experiences I had. So I think that was like the foundational makeup to my mold, I guess you could say, on just not only as an entrepreneur but as a person in general, because we got to meet so many people on the path, right, along your journey. And as long as you're paying attention, everyone is dropping nuggets in your lap, right, that you're going to take with you, right, that may have an influence or impact on just your philosophy on life. And I mean, like, we're doing like deals. We're going to build containers for this drug dealer out in Oregon. Like, but he was legal, right? Because Oregon was literally the only state at the time that was legal.
Yeah.
And so we're like, all right, we went up to Rogue Valley, Oregon, I think it was Rogue Valley, Oregon. And we're out there for a week, and it's like this dude's showing us cannabis trees that are like 10 feet tall, and it was just wild. But that's kind of where I kind of got in tune with mushrooms, psilocybin, started learning about that, because you got to think, now we're in Oregon for a couple months. All those guys that are living on farms are hippies, right? Yeah. So it's just like they're all making tinctures and stuff from cannabis, and making like fresh oils from leaves and stuff to like help with acne. And so I'm just like, this is where it got me into like holistic medicine and thinking about all this stuff, right? And so like I say, you start to just pick up stuff from people that has an impression on the way you think. And that essentially, after that experience, I came back to Vegas for a weekend and that's where I ran into an old friend named Chris. So Chris used to live in that same container village with Tony Shea and 50 other people, and he was paying attention to what we were doing on the road and how we were building the company. And he was like, "Hey man, let me go into this bar with you," because we were kind of crossing paths. I was going in, he was coming out. Shout out to Brad Johnson, because I think that's who he was with. Brad Johnson was Tony Shea's like right-hand man at the time. And so went in, that's where he kind of pitched me on the idea of coming to spearhead Lyft partnerships in Nevada, covering the Las Vegas market in Nevada or Reno. And the very first project was, hey, we're going to throw a fucking festival. and it's going to be in 3 weeks. Can you start next week? Do you mind starting like 2 weeks earlier before your actual start date? Just can't tell Lyft. I was like, all right, yeah, you got me. Because, once you kind of break the threshold of that entrepreneurial mindset, you're always on. There is no only 40 hours a week, 60 hours a week, Monday through. You're always on. Like, if there's a fire, call me at 3 a.m. Let's put that shit out. Like, that's the mindset you need to have. You need to not only, you don't have to be passionate about the damn product. You don't have to be passionate about the damn service. You got to be passionate about solving problems. As long as you become passionate about solving problems, you can work in any fucking industry. You could do anything.
Yeah, at any time.
At any damn time, right? Yeah. Because analyzing and assessing a problem is the same scope that an engineer may assess a problem or look at a problem. A scientist may look at it or assess a problem. A lawyer may look at it or assess a problem. A doctor may look at it or assess a problem, right? Like, everybody has a framework on how they kind of identify what the problem is and then what the root issue of that problem is. Yeah. Because a lot of people, especially in, I'm not going to say what worlds, I'm not going to say what verticals, but let's just say people tend to put Band-Aids or newspaper on things and say, all right, it's solved temporarily, but it's not addressing the root issue. And I think that's what we, or a majority of entrepreneurs, like, that is like our strong suit, is that we can understand what root issues are contributing to the problem people are dealing with, and then say, hey, this is the root issue, not this surface shit that you think. Because people think, oh, my messaging and my copy needs to be better, or no, my videos need to be better. No, your SEO sucks. Nobody is seeing not any of your stuff, or you're not even trying to learn about an algo, right? You're not even trying to think out the box. And that's what we as problem solvers are able to do. And if you're able to do it well, that's where you become a consultant. You're working with many different brands across the scope of different verticals because you know how to do what you do. And that shit only comes by having, trauma, right, along your pathway to becoming, a seasoned, battle-tested professional problem solver. Right. And I think, that's what we all are around this table right now, because one thing I know is that if we say, hey, let's put all our trauma and problems and issues we've had in the last 10 years on the table, I guarantee you everybody's going to look at everybody's shit and be like, whoa, nah, I'll take my shit right back.
It's like we're playing a game of poker.
Yeah. It's like, no, I'll take my problems right back, right? Because, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know.
Yeah.
So I think, once people start to understand that we all have a common interest, which is making things better. Yeah. Right? Making things more clear, more transparent, and share those solutions with people. And I think if we had that lens, that would prevent the fragmentation of all these different silos of people kind of doing this but doing it their way, but they're doing the same shit that the other people are doing. Yeah. And I think that's the one thing that I probably have to take around the last decade from my entrepreneurial journey is not what I've become, but what I've learned. Yeah. And what I've learned is that collaboration is more powerful than independence.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you've picked a fantastic city to leverage all of that, right? So when it comes to Las Vegas, you've seen it change in the years that you've been here or that you've left and you've come back, and you've got to see it right from the epicenter when people like Tony, shout out again to Tony Shea. The whole reason I moved here was I read his book, and I listened to his book as I grew a business all over the Midwest.
Pursuit of Happiness.
Yep. And then, delivering happiness. And then coming here, I drove out here in a rental car one way because I wanted to be closer to that energy that he was building and seeing the community that he had made. And I did get to meet him a couple times before he passed. But now there's this wake of creativity that's been just kind of left here. And people like you and some of the other incredible people that we've had on the show are willing to pick up that torch. What do you think has been the biggest challenge that you've seen here in the community in the last couple years in the ecosystem?
Getting everybody to play well together and support each other.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Names.
I think it's a small pond, right? It's a small pond, right? And we don't have many resources in this pond.
Yeah.
Right? That are available to the fishies in the damn pond.
Yeah.
So the fishies, when they find resources that are available, they try to, gobble it up. Me. And it's not more like, hey guys, look what I found. Everybody come here. And let's address how we can use this resource for the community.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's really the core issue, but the passion is there.
Yeah.
The passion is the same, right? People want to be the leader. They want to be, I'm not going to say they want to be. I think people would like to have an influence on ushering in resources and services or being that individual that supported, the development of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. But I don't think that's a title that any one person can wear. The only person I thought that could wear that was Tony.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we don't have another, I guess Tony right now in the ecosystem that's able to, kind of have that fuck it mindset on put money in it anyways.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to have the most successful P&L sheet, or it doesn't have to have I'm not even worried about the valuation. I love this person behind it.
Yeah.
Like Tony invests in people.
Yeah. Well,
but
in a way, that kind of presented the challenge because Tony's not here now, and where it was predicated on a person, it makes it more challenging to try and duplicate that. And even if we do, it's going to continue to be predicated on the next person. So, I've had great conversations around this. It almost needs to. It does need champions to catalyze that movement and understand what the core values of a movement like that creates. But then it almost needs to be predicated on a place or a process that everyone can kind of understand and take their own responsibility and build in addition to that, at least.
Well, I think even though Tony's not here, I definitely think his legacy, passion, and touch still carries on in those who had the opportunity to have a personal relationship with him, such as myself. You got Tyler out there.
Yep.
Right. I'm so glad that Tyler, was able to not only transition from Zappos, right, but transition into the role that he essentially did at Zappos, which was community builder.
Yep.
Right?
For the city of Las Vegas now. Yep.
And now he's at the city, right? And so now he has a more in-depth, he has more streamlined access to resources, and you see him sharing it on his Instagram or LinkedIn, right? Whether it's a job or whether it's a grant, he's keeping his ear on the heartbeat of funding, I guess you could say, or opportunities. But and you have other people, right? Heather Brown, she's doing an amazing job. You got another gentleman named Kurt. Got a few other people out here, yourself, right? I think you were probably the first person I met that I did not have a personal relationship with, that when we spoke about collaboration, we actually took action and made it happen.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people talk about collaboration, talk about doing things for you or with you, but then there's no follow-up or action to follow that. It's almost like a fucking fart. It's just real thick and intense, and he's just like, oh yeah, and then it just dissipates, right? And so it's just
Everyone's
like,
high on dopamine and
and so
honeymoon phase.
that's kind of like the blue ball situations I try to stay away from. But there are individuals out there leading, and I don't think any one person is the tip of the spear. If it is, it might be the governor or whoever's advocating on the Hill to get more, funding to cultivate the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Nevada.
Yeah.
But like you said, man, there's still much to be done.
Yeah.
I think that there's still tons of room to grow. Yeah. And I think that, we could be impactful if people start working together, but it's like, who is going to be that individual to bring everyone together, right? Who is going to be like, all right, quiet children. Like, I know Nancy, I know Tommy, but come here.
Yeah.
Sit in a circle, right? All right, this is what we're going to do. And until that individual comes, right, the Messiah of Tony's, right, like, I think everyone is still going to be out in the woods on their own, trying to figure out how to make things work or what new resources they can bring to the table. But until that happens, I think we're going to see just many different new brands, new opportunities. Hopefully we'll have 6-7 accelerators going on at the same time in Vegas, right? Because I think that there's tons of individuals with ideas that need all the help, we can get. So, yeah, it's still early.
No, I've been listening to your storytelling since the beginning, and I love your use of analogy, like even through the fries and all that stuff. But what I've been sitting on is actually your tattoo, and with your storytelling on the right. And it kind of it's very cohesive in the way you're delivering like your story and everything that you went through, even in the beginning with the dark and the light. And now I can kind of see your philosophy for life and the view of just how you're living through entrepreneurship and letting it not just like kick you in the face and face the challenges, but show you who you are and then still come out of it and not use that to be a victim of this society, because you seem to be really rooted here and you want to bring back, I love that you brought up education too, because people that don't know Vegas assume just we have the worst educational system, right, in all of the states. I don't know that personally because I didn't grow up here. So anytime someone brings up just anything with infrastructure and just like foundation as a whole, especially in education and in youth, it touches like a certain part of my heart in just being an immigrant and just growing up and really just battling it out with, all of the societal expectations on what entrepreneurship is supposed to be like and all the honeymoon phase that we can joke about with the blue balls and all that stuff. And it's just really hard to stay in touch with and connect to one another because we're so disconnected, especially with social media being like a catalyst for some to, show superficial success, and then for others that are actually trying to do something to catalyze other, right? And I really love just that whole story of like the Oregon and the journey, and like you don't know what you were going through until you got here and how it shaped you to be this person. So it kind of makes sense on how things like wrapped around for you. So what is your philosophy? Like, I just love the tattoos. I want to talk a little, because we don't have conversations often around philosophies on life and stuff. Like, can you share a little bit more about that and how that embraces your philosophy for life?
Yeah. So, like I said, when I lost my little brother, right, I just had like Achilles surgery, right? Right before that Achilles surgery, got hit with a DUI, and I wasn't even driving. The keys were just in ignition. And then my brother passed away. I was in the deepest, darkest depths. I had my first time I took mushrooms, which I don't think I should have took mushrooms the first time with those type of emotions and thoughts. But that night I was ready to go find my brother, right? And and I was in the house by myself, which I haven't done mushrooms in like closed doors ever since. Like, do mushrooms outside if you ain't do it. But yeah. I let go of like all fucks, right? I was totally ready. Like, I felt like if I will go look for my brother wherever. And so I survived that night, and I had watched something dealing with Tony Robbins, right, on money. I was like, oh, all right. And something around that link led to a book saying Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So I read that book because, I'm on the couch with Achilles surgery, cut up. And then read that book, and book changed my life. It had nothing to do with money. It had everything to do with, you just managing your spirit, managing your emotions, how to think, the perspective, mindset you should adopt. And that taught me I had a lot of work to do, right? I had a lot of trauma, yeah, so all that, I think, you have a decision, get down or lay down, right? And when your back is against the wall, some people are going to fight, some people are going to ball up, and you only know in those moments who you are, right? And once you decide to fight, then it's like, all right, you learn that, all right, yeah, the war is within myself, but in life, it's going to be thousands of battles. But as long as you get through thousands of battles that it has to offer, you will win the war, which is fighting for your happiness, right? And I think that the two best days of our lives are the day we're born and the day we find out why. And I didn't come up with that. I read that somewhere, and it stuck with me. Um, and, ever since then, my passion is to find out who I can become, right? What is my I know who I am now. I don't look at my flaws. I look at my value, right? Because you look at your flaws, you're not, I don't know if you guys think about positive affirmations and, understanding how your conscious could come to reality, bring things to reality. But I was always thinking about really highly negative of myself, right? Whether it was low self-esteem or whether it was, regrets, whatever the case. So once I started, you know, thinking more positively on just what's the pathway forward, that's where you start getting the confidence to go through brick wall after brick wall after brick wall, right? And that's where you continue to stand after disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. And that is literally the chiselment taking place of who you are and who you will be known as. Because when we die, right, it's not about the year we came into this world and the year we died. It's about that damn dash. That dash is the most important fucking thing on the tombstone. It's not the little saying, brother, father, mother, sister, all that stuff. It's not that. It's not the dates. It's the dash. And that dash means everything. And that dash is what people talk about at your funeral, your wake, or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. And so with that, with that understanding, like, all right, you have a chance, Paul, to kind of redeem yourself for all the dirt you've done. Because I came up in Vegas, in Las Vegas streets, so I wasn't a street kid, but let's just say Las Vegas wasn't the healthiest place for a kid to have a youthful, normal upbringing. Right? It's not like there's tons of parks and baseball games going on the west side. So with that into the case, I was blessed to have that mindset, but then even more blessed when I had my son. That actually gave me even more of I already had the passion and the fight, but that gave me more tenacity to be aggressive with what I want to do, and then be more aggressive on maintaining what I don't want to do, right? Which is saying no to the things you know are not healthy for you. And that mindset is just like I'm 41, so my like the pleasures, the partying, whatever the case, experiences I've had, I was lucky to have all that in my 20s. Because luckily it was on my best friend's dime, a lot of it towards the tail end. It's always helpful when you have a best friend as a NFL running back. But for our kids, our ceiling is intended to be their floor. Our experiences on life, what we learned, what not to do, what we learned, what worked, all that is intended to be passed on to them and down to them. So that's why I say our ceiling is our children's floor. And so my new focus is like, not only am I very passionate on just like seeing how far and how high I could take this, but it's also my job as a father to take this ceiling as high as it can go, to give my son a grounding foundation to take it even higher. And yeah, I didn't realize until I had a kid how shitty people are who are not in their kids' lives, or like,
Yeah.
just don't talk to their kids, like abandon their kids. Like, I didn't realize that until I had one. I was like, oh my God. And I worked in child protective services. But yeah, that was just a random thought.
No, man, I love that. And because of everything that not only you've been through, everything that you've witnessed, but also the vision that you have, what would be the one thing, if you could wave a magic wand, what's something that you think would really be powerful here in our community that would help you raise your ceiling and everyone else can raise the floor for their children? What would be the most powerful thing that you'd like to see in this community in the next 3 to 5 years?
Somebody to make it their focus to be the fabric to wove everyone together. That's really it. Like, if my magic wand would bring Tony back, of course, right? Because I know that he would do it. I mean, everybody would fall in line, and Tony, what are we gonna do? What should whatever the case may be, and hopefully he has people healthier around him. Anyway, it's another story. But yeah, that would probably be it. Like, someone who could be that fabric to wove everyone together, to where we could have a more cohesive conversation around topics that we are entertaining collaboration on. Like, if we just had, whether it's the city, whether it's the county, whether it's the mayor, right, whether it's a District 6 assemblyman or whatever the case may be, someone who can be powerful on both sides of the ball for the entrepreneurs, but also for advocating for additional resources from federal government agencies.
I love that you brought that up, and it's funny because, we've got a lot of stuff coming up here soon for the community, stuff that I've been very passionate about in Global Entrepreneurship Week. And I remember, this is really hard to even talk about. I remember when I tried to get it going in 2021, I had a lot of momentum here for me, and I got to speak at UNLV about it. And I was like, oh, this will be the first big talk about it. And then once UNLV, it's going to be this big domino effect. I always saw this whole city and community as it's a domino effect that can happen. And I went through the whole speech, and I talked about why I came here. I talked about Global Entrepreneurship Week, what it could do. And the lady, I don't even want to say her name, but she goes, at the end of it all, she goes, Dave, that's really great, but you're not the first person to come here with a goal to change the way Vegas does things. And you're not Tony Hsieh. And I was like, I don't know if you meant to insult me with that, but the fact that you even included me in that same sentence, and it's actually happened a lot where people have compared the things that I'm working on, and one person even said, like, oh, you're like the new Tony. And I'm like, I don't know how to take that. I will do my part.
Just remind them that Tony had a couple bills.
That's what I told her. I said, yo, he had enough money that if he wanted to turn all of the lights in downtown Las Vegas into llamas, he could do it. And before you even asked why, it was already done. Nobody knew why. It made sense somehow. But there is a difference. So the struggle that I have is exactly why I put this whole project together in the first place, and why now it's been burning a hole in my shelf to get it back to the people, is because the mission here is to connect the people of our city and show the world who we really are. And I learned, as much as I thought that I have to change the world, I don't. We don't have to change the world. We just have to change the way that the world looks at Las Vegas, even for a minute. And you mentioned all these great books. Think and Grow Rich, the first job that I ever worked where I was in entrepreneurship, there was a bounty. Hey, if you read this book and write a page on it, I'll pay you $100. And I was like, that sounds weird. I did it. And I ended up growing that guy's company into 5 cities just because it opened up my whole world to what's possible. And the book that I'm reading right now is called Super Communicators. And I haven't been able to make it past the first chapter. And there's something that echoes in this room right now, and it only takes one conversation at the right time to change everything. And I think at least that's what I'm committed to do. I know that's what Tani's committed to do. I know that's what you're committed to do. So however we can do that, let's fucking go, bro. Let's do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that bring it all together that need to happen. Is definitely some water cooler conversations first to kind of build the momentum of advocacy to kind of bring everyone together. So it's almost like you need to have your mafioso round table, right, of all the different families, so to speak.
Let's go to Piero's right now.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. They open at 5. But
Let's go after.
right.
But you got a lot of ones that just recently popped up too that can help, usher in, especially generator.
Yep.
That's brought in by Hua. And then you got, Zero Labs with Quinn and Ryan over there. So
Vets and Tech is right around the corner.
Vets and Tech is right around the corner. So I think we're getting closer. Right?
Yeah.
We're definitely getting closer. And, end of the day, it's about progression, not perfection. So we've all heard that before, but that shit is real.
Yeah.
And I think everyone is moving the needle forward. Everyone, I think, is focused on bringing different resources to Las Vegas, whether it's, like I said, whether it's Heather on the front line advocating for resources on the government sector and, putting stuff together and bringing brands, whether it's Ryan and them, whether it's Kurt bringing angel investors from L.A. or California, whether it's, Elias, doing stuff with the youth over at Nevada Partners, whether it's you working with all of these different brands on production value, like it's already happening.
Yeah.
Everyone is already moving the needle forward. And I think, we're not too far away from that round table effort of collaboration. Yeah. And yeah, I think it's coming. So I'm optimistic on it. And I'm focused on, the pathway forward and like the history of Vegas. It's almost like what the lady told you. Oh, you don't know Vegas. Like, nah, I know Vegas, and that's why Vegas needs to change.
Yeah.
Vegas needs to adapt.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We want to be mindful of your time. And of course, we're going to catch up after this because I feel like we can talk to you for hours and hours and hours on this topic about the things that we can do here in town.
Where can people find you? How can people? What's the best place to find you, connect, and for anybody that just got the bug of I know something we can do. How can people best reach you?
Reach out to Dave Berlin or Elias Benjamin to get a hold of me.
There it is. Frontline defense. Perfect. Well, bro, thank you so much for coming in and not just coming but coming real. We're there. We're almost there. I think it's on the corner. Again, that's why this had to come off the shelf. That's why there's no mistake of why I ran into you at 6:00 in the morning, like right there on the edge of another kick to the gut. And it was like, oh, hi, I was just crying in my car. And then I think I was at the gym, crying at the couch in the front, drinking pre-workout. And you took a creepy ass photo of me. And I was like, what?
I really want to see this photo.
Yeah. and then we were able to talk through it, and it was that morning in that box. I was like, I'm going, let's go. And here we are. So thank you for saying yes. Thank you for showing up, and thank you for everything you do in the community. And with that, we will catch you on the B-sides.
See you later.
Guys, that was it for us today. If you want to stay in touch and see how we can offer any resources or add value to whatever you're doing in this town, reach out to Dave and I on pursue.vegas, and we're glad to share some resources with you. Thank you.